A demon looks at Jesus and says something no human in the Gospel of Mark has said yet. I know who you are, the Holy One of God. It was completely accurate, yet Jesus' response wasn't gratitude. It was a sharp command. Be quiet and come out of him. Over and over throughout the Gospels, this same pattern repeats. He heals people and tells them to say nothing. He silences demons. He commands his own disciples to keep his identity to themselves. And yet, years later, standing at his own trial facing a death sentence, asked directly if he is the Christ, he plainly answers, I am. Why silence the truth for years, only to declare it out loud at the exact moment it would cost him his life? This was not Jesus hiding who he was. This was not confusion or a contradiction in his mission. This was a deliberate pattern of timing, driven by 5 specific secret reasons. From rejecting corrupted testimony from hostile sources, preventing a forced political uprising, avoiding the circus of spectacle, showing personal care for the healed, to protecting the exact timeline of the resurrection. Warning: reason number 2 reveals why a crowd trying to crown Jesus king was actually one of the greatest dangers to his mission. Let's look at the secret reasons Jesus silenced those who spoke his name, and how it changes the way you read the Gospels forever. A demon looks at Jesus and says something no human in the entire Gospel of Mark has said yet. I know who you are, the Holy One of God. It's completely accurate. And Jesus' response isn't gratitude for the correct identification. It's a sharp rebuke. Be quiet and come out of him. Over and over throughout the Gospels, this same pattern repeats. Jesus heals someone and tells them to say nothing. He silences demons who name him correctly. He tells his own disciples, after they finally figure out who he is, to keep it to themselves. And then, years later, standing in front of the entire Sanhedrin at his own trial, asked directly, Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? He answers plainly, I am. Why silence the truth for years, only to declare it out loud at the exact moment it will cost him his life? This is not Jesus hiding who he was. This is not a contradiction in his mission. This is not shame or uncertainty or confusion about his own identity. This is a deliberate pattern of timing, and once you see the actual reasons behind it, you will never read one of these silencing commands the same way again. Let's start with the first reason, because it's the strangest one on the surface and the most revealing once you understand it. In a synagogue in Capernaum, a man with an unclean spirit cries out, Let us alone! What have we to do with you, Jesus of Nazareth? Did you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God. And Jesus rebukes it directly. Be quiet and come out of him. The Greek word here, epitimao, carries real force, not a gentle request, a sharp, authoritative command. Later in that same chapter, after healing many more people, Mark records that Jesus did not allow the demons to speak because they knew him. Here's what most people miss about this pattern. The demons weren't wrong. They were, if anything, the most theologically accurate voices in the entire scene, more accurate in that moment than most of the human witnesses standing around them. And Jesus silences them anyway. Think about why that matters. Testimony isn't just about accuracy. It's about the credibility and character of the source giving it. A demon correctly naming Jesus as the Holy One of God doesn't help anyone trust that claim. It corrupts it, attaches the truth to an unreliable, hostile source no one should be building their faith on. Jesus wasn't protecting a secret. He was protecting the integrity of how that truth would eventually be established, not through hostile, compromised testimony, but through something trustworthy. This is reason 1. Some testimony, even when accurate, comes from a source too corrupted to be allowed to carry it. Jesus silenced the demons not because they were wrong, but because they were the wrong messengers entirely. Reason 2 is far more practical and far more dangerous, and it shows up clearly after one of Jesus' most famous miracles. After feeding 5,000 people from 5 loaves and 2 fish, John's Gospel records the crowd's reaction plainly. When Jesus therefore perceived that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, he departed again to the mountain by himself alone. Not politely invited to become king, about to take him by force. This wasn't a peaceful, orderly coronation. It was the edge of an uncontrolled uprising, forming in real time around a miracle that had just proven, in the crowd's mind, that this man had the power to lead a rebellion against Rome. You have to understand what the word Messiah actually meant to a first-century Jewish crowd living under Roman occupation. It wasn't a purely spiritual, abstract title. It carried heavy political and military weight. A coming king in the line of David, expected by many to violently expel Rome and restore an independent kingdom by force. Josephus, the first-century Jewish historian, records multiple messianic and prophetic figures from this exact period who were violently suppressed by Rome precisely because their followings were read as armed insurrection threats. If Jesus had allowed himself to be publicly declared Messiah at full volume, at the wrong moment, in front of the wrong crowd, it wouldn't have stayed a quiet theological statement. It would have been read immediately by both the crowd and by Rome as the opening move of a rebellion, one Jesus never intended to lead on a timeline that was never his own. This is reason 2. Unchecked, premature declaration of his identity carried the real, immediate danger of being hijacked into a political uprising Jesus had no intention of leading, with consequences that would have derailed his actual mission entirely and gotten a great many people killed in the process. Before we go further, here's where we are. 2 reasons down, unreliable testimony from demons, and the danger of a forced political uprising. 3 more to go, and the next one's show. This pattern wasn't only about politics, it was pastoral too. Reason 3 shows up right after Jesus heals a man with leprosy, one of the most socially isolating conditions in that entire culture. Mark tells you exactly what Jesus says to him. See that you say nothing to anyone, but go your way, show yourself to the priest. Strict, specific instructions immediately after a life-altering miracle. And the man disobeys. He goes out and begins to proclaim it freely and to spread the matter, so that Jesus could no longer openly enter the city, but was outside in deserted places. And they came to him from every direction. Notice the direct practical consequence recorded right there in the text. This isn't Jesus being dramatic about privacy. Disobeying that command actually cost him the ability to move freely and minister effectively. Uncontrolled publicity didn't expand his ministry. It restricted it, turning him into a spectacle magnet he then had to physically retreat from, again and again. This is reason 3. Uncontrolled publicity around miracles tends to attract crowds chasing the spectacle itself rather than the actual message underneath it. And Jesus' own ministry was concretely, measurably hindered every time that publicity got ahead of his control over it. Reason 4 is quieter and more personal, and it's easy to miss entirely if you're only looking for political motives. When Jesus raises Jairus' 12-year-old daughter from death, Mark records something specific about the aftermath. He commanded greatly that no one should know it, and said that something should be given her to eat. Read that sequence carefully. In the very same breath as this enormous, staggering miracle, raising a child from actual death, Jesus' next concern is remarkably ordinary. Make sure she eats something. Not organize a public announcement. Not stage a demonstration of power. A quiet, practical, almost domestic instruction paired directly with a command for privacy. The same pattern shows up again after Jesus heals a deaf and mute man in the region of Decapolis. He commanded them that they should tell no one, but the more he commanded them, the more widely they proclaimed it. The Greek word here, diastellomai, means to give strict, specific orders. This wasn't a casual suggestion either time. Here's what this reason reveals that the political one doesn't fully cover. A grieving family who just got their daughter back, or a man who just received his hearing and speech for the first time in his life, deserves something other than becoming the region's next viral sensation. Privacy, in these specific cases, wasn't primarily about protecting Jesus' mission. It was about protecting the dignity of the people the miracle actually happened to, letting them process an enormous, life-altering moment without instantly becoming public property. This is reason 4. Some of these silencing commands weren't strategic at all in the political sense. They were simply an act of care toward the actual people involved, protecting them from being turned into a spectacle before they'd even had a chance to eat dinner or catch their breath. And now the fifth and deepest reason, the one that finally answers the question this entire video opened with. At Caesarea Philippi, Jesus asks his disciples directly, "Who do you say that I am?" And Peter answers, "You are the Christ." The first time in the entire Gospel of Mark that a human being, not a demon, a human, correctly names him. And Jesus' response is immediate. He strictly warned them that they should tell no one about him. Later, after the transfiguration, after Peter, James, and John watched Jesus' appearance change, shining, with Moses and Elijah standing beside him, Jesus gives the same instruction, but this time with something new attached. Tell the vision to no one until the Son of Man is risen from the dead. Notice that detail carefully. This isn't an open-ended permanent silence. It has a specific expiration date built directly into the command itself, until the resurrection. Jesus isn't asking his disciples to deny who he is forever. He's asking them to hold the truth privately until the one event that would establish it beyond any possible distortion. And Matthew connects this entire pattern directly back to an ancient prophecy from Isaiah, describing a coming servant of God this way. He will not quarrel nor cry out, nor will anyone hear his voice in the streets, till he sends forth justice to victory. A quiet, non-contentious figure, deliberately avoiding the kind of loud, premature spectacle that would have gotten his mission hijacked before its actual purpose could unfold. This is where the open loop from the very beginning finally closes. Remember the contrast? Demons silenced immediately, and yet an open declaration at his own trial? Here's what changes between those two moments. At his trial, in front of the Sanhedrin, when the high priest asks him directly, "Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed?" And Jesus answers, "I am." The danger that had shaped every earlier silence no longer exists. There's no crowd left to crown him by force. There's no premature political uprising left to spark. The only thing his open declaration can do at that specific moment is condemn him, not crown him. And that was exactly the terms on which the truth was always meant to be finally, fully revealed. Not through a mob's coronation, not through a demon's compromised testimony, through a trial across in 3 days later, an empty tomb that no crowd could stage and no political motive could hijack. Maybe you recognize a smaller human version of this same instinct. Think about knowing you have significant news, good or serious, and deliberately choosing not to tell certain people yet. Not because it isn't true, because you know exactly how it would be misused, distorted, or weaponized if it came out on someone else's timeline instead of yours, before the right context was in place to actually receive it well. That's not deception. That's stewardship of a truth that deserves to land the right way. Jesus was doing exactly that on a much larger scale with far higher stakes for years. So here is what all of this leaves you with. First, the truth of it. Every single silencing command in the Gospels had a specific, identifiable reason behind it. Unreliable testimony from hostile sources, the danger of a forced political uprising, the corrosive effect of uncontrolled spectacle, care for the people directly involved in each miracle, and the deliberate protection of the timing for his full identity to be revealed. Second, what that means for you. This was never Jesus hiding, denying, or being uncertain about who he was. It was Jesus controlling the terms on which an explosive truth would be revealed, so that it landed correctly through the resurrection, rather than being hijacked into something it was never meant to be. And third, the part that should stay with you longest. The silence always had an expiration date attached to it, until the Son of Man is risen from the dead. And the moment the stakes finally shifted, at his own trial, with nothing left to hijack and everything left to lose, Jesus stopped staying quiet and told the truth plainly, even though it would cost him everything. Which of these 5 reasons surprised you the most? The demons, the political danger, the spectacle, the personal? care for those healed, or the deliberate timing tied to the resurrection? Tell me below. Because in the end, Jesus was never trying to keep his identity a secret forever. He was making sure it would be revealed on his terms at the one moment it could no longer be twisted into anything other than exactly what it was.